So I was just thinking about a conversation that I had with my friend in Taiwan like a couple of years ago when I went to visit him, and I remember one of the things that we discussed was the book Dune, which he had, a near genius level explanation for, because the guy's really smart. And one of the things that he said is his current wife, who is also, a genius. He had the sneaking suspicion he would say that I think she's smarter than me, which, unlikely, but if he says so, then I believe him, and one of she would be dismissive of, his reading, of science fiction. He'd say, I think she probably read Dune, and she was just like, isn't that just cute? Isn't that quaint? Aren't these cute little men they're so adorable? She sort of had that response to it, but I kind of questioned that, and at the time I didn't really have a very good explanation. I thought, like the desert themes are such a deep and integral part of, Western civilization, and the way that Frank Herbert wove those into. By the way, he lived in Santa Rosa for a while. He wrote for the Press Democrat. The way that he wove all of these different themes, together into this sort of biblical prophecy, science fiction, ecology story, was genius. But one of the things that I didn't realize until recently is the backstory of Dune. And one of the things that he talks about in Dune is this 10,000 years prior to the current conflict in the book, there was this thing called the Butlerian Jihad. And what happened is they created these things called thinking machines. And the thinking machines were harnessed and used by humans to subjugate other humans. And this has created a war in which the humans fought the thinking machines and eventually defeated them. And then it became a law that you could never make a machine in the likeness of a mind, and that was one of the themes, the reason why the people the characters in Dune, these things called mentats, they basically took all of the things that machines did, and they, converged them into human characteristics. And so you would have these human beings called mentats who would do all of the calculations for things. You would have the navigators who would use the spice to navigate the stars and do interstellar travel, because they didn't have machines to do that, but one of the core things that I realized as I was, having Claude read through for me, what Dune talked about, is it was Frank Herbert's view that the issue was not that the thinking machines were the problem. It was that other humans would use the thinking machines to oppress humans by harnessing the power of the thinking machines. And as often is the case with science fiction, that is the juncture that we are at today, which is we now are facing a world in which, people like Sam Altman and Elon Musk and all of the other people who are, using these thinking machines, Mark Zuckerberg, who's the guy, the Palantir guy, I don't remember his name, are going to be using these machines in a way to harness us. And of course, the Chinese, out of all the people out there, who are maybe 12 to 24 months behind us they just rolled out a new version, an open source version. The Chinese would certainly be unconstrained by any of the concerns that are raised by somebody like Dario Amodi, who understands, I think, and has articulated pretty well the concerns that everybody has in terms of creating an autonomous surveillance state and looking at the future, coldly calculating creating an autonomous surveillance state in conjunction with autonomous drones is not something I believe that the Chinese would be constrained by. I don't think that they would be at all concerned with anything other than losing power and control, because they're already, an authoritarian, autocratic government. They're already a surveillance state. So this just fits very neatly within all of that. And so, as I'm sitting there watching a movie last night, pretty terrible movie by Steven Spielberg called Disclosure, I had this moment of fear, and I just kind of sat there in a panic for about 30 minutes thinking about what was happening, and how the science fiction that is happening in my life right now is a lot more terrifying than most of the movies that I've watched. And right now I'm calm about it, but I don't think that it's being oversold. I don't think that anybody's being dishonest. To a large degree, I don't think it's being so much hyped. I think that my sense of fear is not misplaced, and one of the problems that I'm having is just being able to navigate my life and figure out, what the future holds and how this is all going to play out. And it's much more complicated than that. I'm obviously very, very, very concerned about the fact that these machines are going to become, I don't know if I'd say more intelligent, but whatever the word you want to use is, more capable of solving problems, of creating things. My fear is a different fear than the one that Frank Herbert was presenting, which is that humans are going to use it to oppress other humans. My fear is that these capabilities will outstrip the ability of humans to even understand them. And that is a problem that I think is the thing that really makes me lay awake at night, is, reading through the literature and understanding it, is what happens when whatever it is, the thing that is out there. And by the way, these are things, they're not like computer programs. They're not something that you go click and run. These are things that grow. It's like a creature, in a way, artificial creature that's out there. It's collecting data, it's training, it's retraining itself, it's making itself better, or the projection is that it will be able to make itself better and be able to perform things that it can't perform now. And so what happens when it is capable of doing things that we don't understand and we're not capable of understanding? So you envision a world in which someday, these machines will tell us we should do something, and then if we do it, things will be better. But if we don't do it, maybe things won't be better. And our only option is to either choose yes or no, because we're not capable of understanding how it arrived at this decision. We don't have the ability to do that. And that's, out of all the things that scare me the most. And maybe there's a lot of hype. There is a venture capitalist down in Silicon Valley who accused Anthropic of, overselling their technology. He accused him of acting like they're midwifing a deity, and here's my problem is, what if they are? So that's sort of where I'm sitting. It's sort of a heavy conversation to have before it's even 8:06 a.m. in the morning. But this is where I'm at.